What if the most notorious event of the Gettysburg campaign was not George Pickett's ultimate offense? What if, months after orchestrating the futile Pickett's charge, the Confederate general masterminded a more obscure yet horrific massacre, one that tore families apart, enraged a country, and let justice dangle precariously? This evening, we reveal a concealed Civil War disgrace, the day Major General George Pickett commanded the killing of 22 men, his fellow Southerners labeled traitors, while history would recall them as victims of his pride and rage. Was this a military necessity, calculated vengeance, or plain murder under the banner of war? And, most alarmingly, how did Pickett evade consequence, his reputation stained, yet his name absent from the records of the law? Remain with me as we untangle a complex narrative of treachery, rebellion, and payback, a tale so astonishing President Grant himself paused to pursue it. We aim to re-examine the historical episodes that many would rather keep concealed. If you believe you understand the Civil War's most shocking truths, reconsider. This is the account of how Pickett murdered the guiltless and escaped punishment. But before we start, please like and subscribe to our channel to help our growing community. 7 months after Confederate Major General George Pickett's destinied command that dispatched his men to almost inevitable death at Gettysburg, he ordered the deaths of 22 North Carolinians held captive. As commander of the Confederate Department of Southern Virginia and North Carolina, Pickett enacted this bleak decree following an unsuccessful campaign intended to retake New Bern, North Carolina, from Union hands. While many records focus on Pickett's actions at Gettysburg, his military service was filled with repeated failures for the Virginian. By late 1863, with the Confederacy shifting troops across various fronts to combat numerous Union assaults, Pickett was in charge of southeastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina, yet saw his forces reduced by these redeployments. He expressed annoyance that assured reinforcements failed to appear, leaving him with inadequate numbers for proper defense or offense. Early in 1862, Union General Ambrose Burnside seized key areas of North Carolina's coast, such as New Bern, utilizing these positions to begin raids, causing major turmoil within the state. General Benjamin Butler did take part in various raids and operations in North Carolina. Still, a particularly significant mission was headed by Brigadier General Edward Wild, who encountered a Confederate guerrilla called Daniel Bright. Irregular combatants like Bright were not accorded the same wartime protections as regular troops. Following a summary court-martial, Wild convicted Bright of guerrilla actions and directed his execution. In retaliation for this, Union forces soon found a black soldier hanged from a tree, a retaliatory act intended as a message to Union leaders working in North Carolina. General Wild's incursions forcefully targeted estates where enslaved individuals were being liberated and black men enlisted into the Union Army. His strikes against Confederate assets and establishments gained the War Department's notice, leading to a directive for Pickett to assault and seize the heavily defended town of New Bern. This background is vital to grasping Pickett's predicament, particularly in the wake of the catastrophe at Gettysburg. Pickett's division had been devastated in the famous Pickett's Charge, leaving him emotionally shattered by the monumental loss. His competence as a leader was doubted, compelling him to protect his standing. Now in charge of a region but constantly losing soldiers to other areas, Pickett faced the formidable mission of capturing a strongly fortified town with reduced manpower. Considering his diminished authority and mental condition, the obstacle ahead was enormous. Pickett's effort to take New Bern was plagued by poor coordination between his ground troops and a minor naval detachment aiding the assault. While his men managed to take hundreds of Union prisoners, plus arms and supplies, they gained little ground in seizing the town itself. Many troops only skirmished with the fort's outer guards instead of storming the primary defenses. After this failure, Pickett retreated to Kinston, North Carolina, with some 300 Union prisoners. Worried for their welfare, Union General Peck Pickett's adversary at New Bern sent a note demanding adherence to the laws of war concerning captives. Peck's specific concern involved the destiny of imprisoned black soldiers. Pickett responded that any black prisoners he took would be put to death at once. Peck reminded him of President Lincoln's order prohibiting racial discrimination in the handling of prisoners. Pickett shot back that if any Confederates were killed, he would respond by executing 10 Union troops for each one. Within the roughly 300 prisoners were 22 North Carolinians who had first served in nearby Home Guard regiments, but following Confederate conscription had escaped to Union territory and joined the Federal Army. This strained incident illustrates both the savage nature of the war and the profound splits it created. George Pickett called the 22 men Confederate deserters, even though abandoning a Home Guard unit was not unlawful under North Carolina statutes. He assembled a court-martial that condemned all these men to die. Since they were local residents, appeals for clemency arrived from town leaders, relatives, and even certain soldiers in Pickett's own ranks. Pickett demonstrated scant pity, offering little food and no adequate housing for the captives. One prisoner's wife brought her husband a blanket so he would not need to sleep on the earth. Throughout the trial and before the hanging, Pickett permitted only short meetings with family. A wife was given merely 2 hours with her husband before his execution. Across 3 separate hangings, all 22 men were killed, among them a boy of just 14 years. At the time, the executions provoked debate. The United States considered whether Pickett should be charged with war crimes, although no official trial took place. Notably, Ulysses S. Grant felt the affair did not warrant charges against Pickett. Nevertheless, this occurrence stands as a profound stain on both Pickett's record and the wider history of the Civil War. After the killings, strain in the area intensified abruptly. The deaths of the 22 men, notably the teenagers and local defenders, deepened bitterness within the North Carolina public and energized Union supporters. Confederate armies tried to hold power, but such extreme actions eroded any local favor and made enlisting and civilian backing harder to secure. Union officers in the region used the hangings for propaganda, emphasizing Confederate severity and the dangers for those who changed sides. The event also damaged prospects for mending fences between split communities in the state. Meanwhile, Pickett personally grappled with the results of his commands. Though publicly unapologetic, he was said to struggle in private with the spirit of his own men and the civilian reaction. His command continued to be hampered by lack of troops and the intense stress of Union pushes on the coast and inland. Looking back, the executions highlight the savage character of guerrilla conflict and internal conflict during the Civil War, where allegiances were unclear and severe penalties were applied to prevent desertion and insurrection. For Pickett, the incident became another mark of defeat and dispute on an already blemished military record, eclipsing once promising Confederate hopes in the Southeast. As we conclude this segment on George Pickett's most terrible act, one query remains beyond the history books. How many other narratives like this one stay hidden, covered by valiant legends, awaiting our discovery of unpleasant realities? Was the law truly upheld, or did Pickett's avoidance of blame uncover a more significant flaw in how wartime atrocities were assessed? And what does this imply about the price of allegiance, the agony of torn loyalties, and the darkness that war leaves long after the last gunshot? If this account disturbed you, if it shook your perspective on honor and evil in war, then participate in the discussion below. Who is accountable for these deaths? Pickett, the Confederacy, or the savage realities of war itself? History is rarely as clear as champions and rogues. Occasionally, the quiet between the words holds the most truth. Remain inquisitive, for the past never ceases to disclose its secrets.